Hello Redshifters. In this video we're going to have a look at compositing optical effects from Redshift into After Effects, Resolve, Fusion and Nuke. So the optical effects part of the Redshift post effects are bloom, flare and streak, and these are additive effects that have no alpha component. So if you're looking at the alpha here, you can see it's opaque. Now the strange thing is that this is glass. You can see here I'm using glass preset, right? And glass should be transparent, right? It looks opaque. And it looks opaque because of a little option in the system legacy, which is called refraction effects alpha channel. So if I enable this, and in this case, when refraction effects channel alpha channel, as you can see, it does affect the alpha channel. Now, you can have basically refraction or transmission using ray bending. Basically, the ray gets bent when the IOR is different than 1, right? And if you don't want that, you can use just a simple opacity. So basically I can turn this off, right? And come here to the overall opacity and change that, right? But in 99% of the cases, if you want something that looks like glass, you want to have basically transmission, right? And it gives you this. Now this is, I'm looking at the standard material, and the standard material in the subsurface settings, it has transmittance and extinction, right? Now this refraction effects alpha channel only works when these are in special cases. Like this is transmission color is absolutely white. So if you're doing something like this, it's not gonna be affecting the alpha channel anymore, right? Because this is not white. Or if the extinction is not black, it's a bit different than black. Again, this goes away. But probably you're not going to use the standard ratio material. You're going to use the standard material, right? The standard material doesn't quite have these issues, as you can see here, right? And you can change the transmission to whatever you want. Of course, the color of the transmission dictates how opaque this is, the alpha, right? But nonetheless, in this case, right, you can use the refraction effects alpha channel and you'll be fine. But you can see there's no post effects in the alpha, nothing, right? And you're gonna ask me, why do you have refraction effects alpha channel as an option and it's not on by default? Well, because when you're doing proper ray bending in 3D, things happen differently that you're trying to comp things in Complan, right? You can't quite bend rays in Complan, can you? It's like just two flat layers that are semi-transparent somehow, right? This is why. And at least it reminds you that, hey, if you want to do this right, use the proper background. Now, the thing is, proper background, if the clients want to change it on the fly, what you're going to do? You re-render? No, you're going to try to do this in Complan, right? And there are ways to fake ray bending in Complan, but we're not discussing that here. Or discussing about how can I bring this into Complan and make it right. So at this point, what I want to do is basically just render and save this file as, let's say, 8-bit PNG. Right, so file save image, you can use this, or you can use the save option from here. Now, I'm in C4D, and C4D has this option called straight alpha, which does an unpremultiplication before actually storing the image, right? And what this does is the following: because the alpha, it's this, right? It will expand the RGB to account for the alpha, which leads to, if you're inverting this, right, by pre-multiplying, because this is unpremultiplying, you're going with this in Complan, and you pre-multiply this, and because these have no alpha, you're going to lose them. So don't use straight alpha if you want to deal with transparency and transmission, or opacity and transmission, whatever you want to call it, right? So we have this saved, and I'm gonna go into Nuke, bring it in, and straight out of the bat, this looks right. Okay, there's no premultiplication happening. So what premultiplication is, sorry, there's a little cache issue with sometimes Nuke doesn't clear always the cache. So here's the render without premultiplication, and here's it with premultiplication. And if I load this image into, in this case I'm using Nomax to show images, and it shows frameless, so basically floating, and I do like that, right? But you can see there's no post effects. There are post effects, and you can see them here, but they're not outside the alpha. And this is a bit of an issue, right? If we're going to After Effects and DaVinci Resolve and Fusion, gonna notice the same thing can happen. So for instance, I bring it in here and you lose this. I bring it in here, right? And you lose everything outside. So we're gonna have to deal with this. I'm gonna show you each of these, how you can make it work. But first, we're gonna explain a bit what this premultiplication is. Right, I'm gonna use Nuke here, and I'm gonna extract the RGB and no alpha. So this one had alpha, now it has no alpha. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing and extracting just the alpha. So in this case, let's extract just the alpha. We're getting this, right? And no, I'm gonna extracting the alpha as RGB and no alpha, right? And then we're gonna merge this as multiply, right? Which gives us exactly what premult is. Okay? These two are identical. You can see here I'm changing the input, and you can see if you're following the yellow thing, you're gonna see what it does, right? And this leads to a bit of an issue when you're trying to comp things. So let's get a flat image someplace, right? And put this over that. And you can see immediately, this looks kind of right, okay? Kind of right, and by kind of right, I mean this can be, for instance, a checker, right? And that would be the right thing to show you. And because when I'm using a checker here, and let's make this, the whole thing darker, so like this. You can see there's no ray bending, so there's no distortion here. This is a straight up kind of transparent layer, nothing else. There's no, the background is not distorted in any way. Are there ways to distort this? Yes, there are. We're not going to discuss this here. There are as I said, there are ways to fake this, right? But you can see here that this works straight out of the bat. No, you don't have to do anything. Now, one little thing inside Nuke it's really helpful. You can see here, if I hover, you have a list of operation and the math for that. And if you're looking at the over part, you see it's somewhere down here, right? You're gonna notice that over it's basically A plus B multiplied by the negative of, or inverted of, the alpha, right? So we have some alpha here, and if we want to replicate this, let's keep this to the side, right? So let's try to replicate this again. So we're gonna get the RGB, no alpha. We're gonna get the alpha, just alpha. And we're gonna invert it. This is the alpha. And we're gonna invert it. If you want to do it like this with invert, or even though it's using a math expression, it's the exact same thing, right? So invert. Okay, and I want to invert RGB. nothing else. And we're going to multiply this with the background, and this will be in multiply mode, right? And then we're gonna, remember, this is the RGB without alpha. We're gonna just add it. So this will be a plus on top of the multiplied background with the inverted of the alpha, right? This is the multiple, so alpha inverted multiplied by the background, and we're gonna add this one on top. And that's the exact same thing as this. Absolutely identical. And this is what we're gonna try to reproduce in After Effects. Why? Because in DaVinci and in Fusion, it just works. Now, there's a little quirk in DaVinci, because when you're bringing some footage in, it does this premultiplication, right? And you can see here, if I do a timeline with this, and let's create a timeline, right? And it's already pre-multiplied, but and you're going to Fusion and you say, hey, I want to comp something here, give me a background, and we're gonna put some background on behind, and let's do something here, and clearly this is not working, right? Because this is already pre-multiplied. Now, two ways of dealing with this. In this case, I'm in DaVinci, right? But if you have Fusion, you're not gonna get something like a media in. You're gonna get a loader. So basically, it will be IO loader, right? We can do the same thing. Get this guy, right? Again, it's, as you can see here, pre-multiplied. But this node, you can see, has an extra option called multiply by alpha. And this needs nothing. Basically, I can do it like this, and this will work. No problem whatsoever. But still, this guy doesn't have it by default. So what do? We come back here to the edit or the cut, but the edit works just fine, and we interpret this alpha mode as pre-multiplied. And you don't have to do anything, this just works. As you can see, these two are identical, right? The media in and the post in the loader, and this just work. If it's this one or that one, same thing. So you don't have to do much in Nuke or Fusion or DaVinci Resolve. Just note how to interpret your things. Now, After Effects is a bit different. I find it a bit quirky, but it is what it is. So what do? We do, okay, 8-bit Adobe Color Management, 8-bit is fine. By default, this is set up like so, okay? And I find it to be wrong. So I want to work in sRGB, and I want to linearize working color space, very important. And then we're gonna bring in the post effects render. It looks like this. It's ugly, right? And we can put it on some solid thingy. And let's make this darker and maybe kind of bluish, dark blue. Okay, and it looks terrible, no good. Okay, so how can we make this work? So remember that this is RGB, and we need an A, right? So I'm gonna import this again, and this time, let's call it A. We have to interpret this a bit different. So RGB will be interpreted as ignore alpha, which gives us this. And by the way, I don't know what's with the image banding. Probably this is, let's do 32-bit per channel for the comping. There you go. Okay, so for the A, on the other hand, I want to interpret this as just inverted alpha, nothing else. Just, I can do nothing else with the RGB, just inverted alpha. Why? Because if you're looking at the alpha channel here, this is what I'm getting. This is the inverted alpha, right? If this was interpreted as default, this will be like this. So I want the inverted alpha. It's important to understand in a second why. So remember that we have to multiply the inverted alpha by the background, right? At this point, this is our alpha, this is our alpha inverted, but I still have the RGB here. I don't want the RGB, I just want the alpha. So basically I have to come here and say something like set channel or whatever you have here. Let's try set channel on the alpha, right? So this will be alpha, alpha, and alpha, and the alpha itself, because remember I'm multiplying this, right? I can't leave it as alpha, I'm gonna leave it as full. Okay, I don't want a double premultiplication on the alpha side. So this is our background multiplied by the inverted alpha. And now we have a RGB on top, which will go as add. That's all there is. And I can come here and color correct, I don't know, brightness and contrast, why not? Right, and play with this. It keeps the post effects, no problem whatsoever, right? This is all working fine. There's no shenanigans with any edges or anything. Hope it helps. Happy shifting. Cheers.